Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Thomas Hubert, news correspondent with the Irish Farmers Journal. Coming up on the show this week.
The 19th of February 2017, a letter was sent to the mart in Castleblayney instructing them to get that the licence wasn't valid. And there were 6 subsequent letters, and the last one was sent, I think it was the 27th of October in 2017. So during all that length of time, the PRSA failed in their duty of care. They never informed the journal, they never informed local radio stations or any media outlets to inform us, the farmers, that there was a situation with the mart.
Farmers in County Monaghan are lawyering up after losing €250,000 in the collapse of Castleblayney mart. And
you've got a glorious opportunity to keep these cracks and fissures. Are you going to be able to achieve it? You've got to really think about what you do over a 24, 48-hour period after heavy rain. Are you going to do something that you think you have to do for this weekend? Are you going to be able to hold off and think about the next 3 or 4 years?
The silver lining in the drought, reduced soil compaction. How can you make it last? But first, we're just 2 months away from the start of electronic tagging for all sheep, as announced by the Minister of Agriculture. But farmers say things won't be ready. Our news correspondent, Barry Cassidy, spoke with members of the IFA Sheep Committee, starting with their Vice-Chairman, Kevin Comiskey.
Kevin, can you tell me what you've been discussing today?
Basically, we're going through the EID, the electronic tagging for sheep, and we have met with the department on a few occasions and met with the Minister, and my feeling on it is that the Minister has to postpone this deadline or this date of the 1st of October for electronically tagging the lambs until the department get their house in order. Farmers is electronically tagging their sheep since 2010, breeding stock, ewe lambs and breeding ewes. And yet, when you go to trace them and see where they are, they can't give you full traceability, or you can't. They have no acknowledgement of where they're with the pink dockets and everything. They're just thrown in marts, they're thrown in the department, they're thrown in factories, and they're not able to tell you where your sheep is.
So would you say then that the farmer opposition is not necessarily against the EID, but rather the implementation of the system?
Definitely. It's not totally against the electronic tagging. It's the system has to be got up and running properly, like a central point of recording, as I said, or something like that. Has to be. The department really has to get their house in order first before they start imposing more regulations on the farmers. And of course, the cost is a huge factor. You're going 100% increase from 25 cent for the tip tag at the minute up to 130 for the electronic tags. So when you add it all up, you're talking about 2 million per year, and it's 14 million up to Foodwise 2025.
And the department is talking about on a €50 once-off payment. Would you feel that that's enough for sheep farmers?
I wouldn't accept their €50 at all. I think it's totally, it's just laughable. You give €50 to a child for First Communion, and to think it's just an insult to farmers to offer €50 as a once-off payment for tags that's going to be buying. It's ridiculous.
I've listened to people from the likes of ICM or from Board B who've said that these tags are going to bring us more market access, that it will be ultimately beneficial to the sheep sector. How do you feel on that?
Well, definitely, if that's the case, and there is going to be more market access and everything. But as I said, at the moment, we can't see any benefit to the farmer. Only it's another cost and another labour that the farmer has to go through.
Sheena McCarthy from North Cork, a member of the IFA Sheep Committee. Sheena, can you give us just what the committee's thoughts on EID so far are?
Well, it's a situation or an occurrence, whichever you want to call it, where it's going to put more stress, workload and finance on the sheep farmers of the country for very little in return. It seems to be driven by the sheep industry, which does not include the sheep farmers. And there seems to be very little thought and just certainly very little consultation done with the sheep farmers.
I've seen survey results carried out by the IFA at Sheep 2018, and there does seem to be a level of disconnect between the industry and the farmers.
Definitely. The industry just seem to get a notion into their head and run with it, whereas without farmer consultation, and this is where the whole thing is falling down. The meat industry just seem to have their own ideas. They're not bringing the farmer along. Without the farmer, they have nothing.
Then here we are, I suppose, 2 months from the decision, the key decision date, the 1st of October. Is it something you think the industry is ready for?
Definitely not. Definitely not, because at the moment we're in what I would call an in-between place as far as sheep production or sheep finishing is concerned. We have this year's lambs born. Most of them have just a single tag in them because they're lining them up to either go to slaughter or go to mart. So then you come to the 1st of October. The lambs that have been slaughtered, that's fait accompli, they're out of the system. But you're into the store lamb trade at that stage where most of those have been sold. Nearly all of them have been sold through the mart with a mart tag on them. So if EID comes in, it is up to the store farmer then who's fattening them to go off and update them all to EID, and that is some amount of work to be done.
I suppose a lot of farmers are suffering at the moment with drought conditions, with a lot of other additional costs that might usually be here in another year, and EID is going to be another one of that.
Exactly. You talk about drought conditions, there are sheep farmers beginning to feed ration at the moment. They're trying to get ewes ready for mating. Body condition is down, so they're feeding ration, or in some cases they're feeding silage or hay, whatever they can get. Sheep farmers have had a very, very bad winter. There's been a lot of, because of the weather, there's been a lot of lamb deaths, lamb mortality. So there isn't the same lamb crop there. At the present moment, I think the lamb kill is back approximately 55,000.
Pat Murray, Wexford member of the Sheep Committee. Pat, can you just tell me, coming up to the 1st of October date, is the industry ready for this decision of EID tags?
No, the industry is certainly not ready. The Minister made a decision back last May without consulting the farmers. Farmers are out here buying store lambs there at the moment, and there's complete confusion. The Minister needs to come very clear, and what I'd be saying is that there needs to be a deferral on at least until January 2020. Nobody's ready for this, and the Minister has made a decision without consulting.
So would you say that this decision, this impending decision, is causing disruption in the trade at the moment?
It is, because fellas are out there afraid to buy store lambs. There's confusion whether to put full EID tags in them. A lot of fellas are selling lambs with the one tag, and they're not. The buyers then are unsure. They're afraid to bid on lambs that them tags don't cover. Clearly, the Minister needs to give farmers time. He also needs to. It certainly, as presently set up, it's unworkable.
I suppose that's the feeling I've kind of gathered from the ground, and that farmers were somewhat shocked by this decision, in that there seemed to be a lack of consultations from the department side.
Well, that's the reason the Minister didn't consult. The IFA in particular, as an IFA rep in Wexford, the feed that I'm getting from farmers on the ground is that the Minister made a decision without thinking forward. When you sell a lamb straight from your farm into the meat factory, it would be a crazy decision to put full EID tags in them sheep, because once that tag is cut out in half an hour, and it doesn't add up. That's a traceable lamb once he has a tag in his ear and once he's gone into the factory.
Because I suppose back in 2012, when full EID tagging was brought in for mature ewes, that was an understandable decision. What's happening now, I guess there's a feeling amongst farmers, is that it's nonsensical, really. It
is, and there's an extra cost there to farmers. And I suppose this is something that hasn't been taken into account. We're taking all the costs there. The meat industry has lobbied for full EID tagging, yet they're taking none of the share of the costs involved.
Sheep farmer Pat Murray, ending this report by Barry Cassidy. Now let's go to Castleblayney in County Monaghan, where the mart has been closed since the end of March. Around 100 farmers are owed money for their livestock, and others have lost deposits on property transactions managed by AP Nugent, the auctioneering company running sales at the mart. I was at a meeting organised by the IFA in the town on Monday night, and I asked the association's regional chairman for Ulster North Leinster, Nigel Renahan, for an update on the situation.
I suppose the point we've got to is that farmers have lost a lot of money in the mart, and they were nervous about putting more money in and just seeing a black hole and throwing good money after bad. So we in the IFA, I spoke to the president, Joe Healy, and we'd made the decision that the IFA's legal team will speak to Paul McCormick, the solicitor here, that was here tonight from Castleblayney, and we will seek the legal opinion of the senior counsel in relation to this, and the IFA will pick up the tab for that. come to the point where if there is a case here to be run and the legal counsel feels that there is a good case here and we should take it forward, at that point in time, at the next meeting here, we will be asking the farmers to chip in relation to running a case, but initially find out if there's a case and can we take a case forward. The IFA will pick up the bill for that. And we heard tonight, people were delighted at the fact that the IFA is rolling in behind everybody here, and that in itself gives people confidence. And it's only in times like this, when people are in dire straits, that when IFA does do something like that, that people recognise the true value of the IFA, and as the motto always has gone, strength and unity, and it proves it here tonight when you heard reaction.
What's the, I suppose, what would be the case? Who is it against, and what hope do farmers have of getting their rights recognised in this case?
Well, the fact is, in the 19th of February 2017, a letter was sent to the mart in Castleblayney instructing them to get that their licence wasn't valid. And there were 6 subsequent letters, and the last one was sent, I think it was the 27th of October in 2017. So during all that length of time, the PRSA failed in their duty of care. They never informed the journal, they never informed local radio stations or any media outlets to inform us, the farmers, that there was a situation with the mart.
And we're talking about the Property Services Regulatory Authority, yes. So the watchdog, the kind of regulator of all the marts and auctioneers. Yeah.
Yes, they had a duty of care, which is but the anomaly in this is anyone before, when he had a licence up to the 19th of February 2017, anybody that paid deposits on land or had been owing other monies, they can get that money from the compensation fund. Now that only applies when he had a licence. But when he didn't have a licence, there's no fund and there's nothing available. And this is where we have the issue with the Property Services Regulatory Authority, because they failed to do what they were set up to do. The same way as if you have an hotel here tonight and it doesn't have a licence, the hotel will be closed down. The same as if you go to your vet and the vet hasn't a licence to practice, you can't practice, and that would be implemented. But we had an anomaly here where the PRSA effectively sat back, did nothing, and just wished it away and just brushed it under the table. But yet and all, they never did what they were meant to do, was to protect people, protect consumers. And we are consumers because we were going in there buying cattle, and at that they failed in their duty, and we will take them to task over this.
And you said that was February 2017, so more than a year after that, the mart continued to trade, and people ended up with those losses not being paid. They're the ones who are here tonight. Yeah.
That's the problem, and you heard the anger that was there, and people in this position they're here tonight. Like they were asked initially, to put some money, into a kitty to pay the initial fees of barristers and solicitors, and to feel, is there a case or isn't there a case, and asking people in that situation to put more money into maybe what they feel could effectively be a black hole. But whenever I stood up and I said that we in the IFA we will pay these bills, and we will find out if there's a case, and up until that point we will cover the cost of getting a legal opinion. And if the legal opinion does come back, at that point in time we will have another meeting here, and at that meeting we will be asking the farmers to put in to run the case.
That was Nigel Rinaghan of the IFA in Castleblayney. Stay with us. After this break, we're talking soil structure.
9 million tonne silage shortfall. In this week's Irish Farmers Journal, the prolonged dry weather has seen a major silage shortfall as farmers use up next winter's fodder stocks. Weather hits all farm incomes. Unpaid farmers seek legal advice on mart regulators' duty of care. 9 farms in permanent TSB loan sale. And in Irish Country Living, don't miss your free 28-page summer food magazine bursting with mouth-watering barbecue recipes, creative ideas for kids' meals, wine reviews and competitions. Inside this week's Irish Farmers Journal, on sale today.
The very dry summer has been a major worry for many farmers, but it can actually help with soil compaction. The Irish Farmers Journal's Northern Ireland correspondent Peter McCann was at the Soils event on the Greenmount campus on Tuesday, and he found out more from Brian Irvine of CAFRE.
Peter, it's been a fantastic summer. It's done wonders for us. We've had this shrinking and drying of the clay soils, and that has created these big open cracks and fissures for us. So we talked about those as being macro pores, and those macro pores are the one thing we've been missing for the last 5 or 6 years, or really really tough weather. So that's going to let a lot of air into the soil. That's going to let our drains start to work again. And what's going to happen over the next few months and hopefully years is those macropores will get affected by the biology, by bacteria, actinomycetes, fungi, and then the bigger animals that are eating those and the earthworms. And we're going to get sticky organic compounds. We're going to get those macropores to become more permanent. Now, the key thing is what we do this autumn. So if you're going, because obviously the soils are going to get wet again. This field we're standing in today, it got 80 mil of rain on Saturday and it coped with it. And it's a pretty compact soil. It's nothing spectacular at all. And it's because of those cracks and fissures. But this autumn, we're obviously going to get another wet challenge again. So really, you've got a glorious opportunity to keep these cracks and fissures. Are you going to be able to achieve it? You've got to really think about what you do over a 24, 48 hour period after heavy rain. Are you going to do something that you think you have to do for this weekend? Or are you going to be able to hold off and think about the next 3 or 4 years? That's a real challenge. So thinking about how to reduce your weight loads on your machinery, and your key point is your timing. You've got to keep farming, you can't avoid that, but you're trying to reduce the damage, you're trying to keep this opportunity.
So then you talked about the macro pores, then you also talked about micro pores, or what's that? So we used to talk about when you open up, if you dig, your 50 by 50 centimetre surface of a spade and have a look in below. What are you looking for, or what are you looking at when you talk about the micro pores and the type of different soils? I suppose vary within farms and even between farms and even within fields too, I suppose.
Okay, well, in good soil structure, we're going to have, roughly 50% of it's going to be clay, organic matter. We're going to have roughly 50% is going to be pore space. So it's going to be made up of macropores and micropores. Basically, if we've poor soil structure, we'll have maybe 30% of that will be micropores, maybe 20% macropores. So that means that there'll be a lot of water retention in the micropores, soil solution, that's where it'll stay, and we'll have a bit of filtration to drains, we'll have a bit of air coming in. But the whole thing has switched round this year, because with all this cracking and drying, we're now dealing with 50% soil, 30% macropores, 20% micropores. We'll still have the micropores for soil solution to stay in, for our roots to extract from, but we have this air getting in there now. And that air is driving soil biology. It's going to help your bacteria, your actinomycetes, your fungi. It's going to help that break down the organic matter. You're going to release nutrients. You're going to create more pore space for roots to grow. We're going to get deeper rooting. The whole soil biology kicks in. We're able to extract more nutrients out of the soil because we have a stack of nutrients in there. They're unavailable to us. They're unavailable because the soil biology can't work, because it doesn't get enough air. Amazingly, last year, soils would have grasses wouldn't have been able to take up enough water because there wasn't enough air in there to allow the roots to respire and take it up. It's crazy, isn't it?
There's plenty of it too, yeah.
It was indeed,
Brian Irvine there with Peter McCann. We have more practical advice in this next report, but this time on farm safety. Our beef editor Adam Woods was at a farm walk organised by Teagasc and Bord Bia near Lahardane in County Mayo last week. Jacinta O'Neill from the local Teagasc office told him about the small things everyone can do to reduce the risk of accident on their farm.
In the last 10 years on farms in Ireland, including 2017, there have been 210 fatalities on farms. And relative to the number of farmers that are actually involved in the industry, it's the highest fatality rate of any industry in the country. Of those 210 deaths, 24 of them were children and 74 of them were over the age of 65. And as we know, the ageing population is still involved in farming to a very high rate. So those two figures represent that the very young and the more senior members of the population are amongst the most vulnerable. How can we improve safety?
Well, I suppose where is the blockage? I suppose it's been in the headlines all last week. We've people filling out health and safety statements as part of that Board B quality assurance audit. What is the problem, or where do you think the real issue lies with farms? You spoke as well about, I suppose, the certain times of the day that they were more accident prone. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's the pressure that people put themselves under, and in my own daily life I do it as well. We all are victims of it. We want to try and get as much done as we can. Towards the end of the week, people get a bit more slack in their concentration. Maybe they're tireder. They're trying to get jobs done and out of the way by the end of the week. It's human nature, but as well as that, farmers, we are a different breed, or in that we think that we're exempt from all the rules in ways. It's not going to happen to me. I have everything set up in my place. I have my safety statement. I have my PTO cover. My lagoons are fenced, all the rest. But as my co-presenter, John Gunby, was talking about there, it can happen just from a simple lapse in concentration. And unfortunately, farming is a high-risk activity, and unless people get into the frame of mind that they have to do everything that they do safely, and that includes the very young on the farm and the more senior members of the farm. What I'm saying to farmers is about the health and safety document. There's no point in having it complete. Yes, it's a legal requirement. You need it for your TAMS application or whatever, but at the same time it needs to be an active document that every member of the family has had a role in completing it. Between talks there, 4 kids came down to talk to us. 2 of them are from the farm here and 2 of them are their cousins, and I was demonstrating the blind spots around the tractor there as we'd marked out on the ground, and one of those children was the height at which we had said, this child, 7 years of age, this is his height, and we were able to mark out where the driver couldn't see him. Those kids in an instant, and I asked them what would happen if you stood within this yellow line that we'd marked out. You'd be dead. I mean, it was just a simple fact like that. Children are able to see it crystal clear. It's just with complacency and habit and stress and time and all the rest, we just get lax about it, and that's what we need to try and pay attention to put simple practical measures in place, like fencing off lagoons, putting a cover over a slurry gap out of a cubicle shed, parking machinery safely, lowering the equipment.
It's the little things can catch you.
It's the tiny little things. Yeah, that's it, Adam.
Thanks very much, Jacinta. Thank you.
That's it for this week's podcast. You can find out more about all these stories in this week's paper at farmersjournal.ie and on the mobile app. The sound engineer this week was Ferdia Mooney. From me, Thomas Hubert, safe farming, and talk to you next week.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.